I need his takes. I need his takes on Dan Hurley.
Dying for it's a little dramatic, not gonna lie.
Yeah. I would have killed to have seen what he would have said about Dan Hurley today.
Did you?
No.
He said he would have.
Like I would have loved to have seen what he would have said about Dan Hurley.
Sus.
Sus.
All right. The angry part 1.
You think I'm kidding? That's probably what it's gonna be named.
Good.
No one's gonna get it. Be like, who?
Unless we start talking about Kyrie and Jerry again. Which is all could happen.
I would just like to point out before we get too far into that Jerry Jones was wearing sunglasses during the game yesterday.
Incredible.
So even he knows.
Too bright.
Even he knows that the sun exists in the windows, but stadium still exists, so he hasn't torn it down like he said he was going to.
Right. All right. Welcome back to the Sportsball Podcast, your source for sports, the number one Sportsball Podcast on Spotify, Apple. I'm not sure how many other platforms there are for podcasts, but those are the main two off the top of my head.
Does that make 2 hashtags? If it's hashtag number 1?
Yeah, sure.
Cool.
Hashtag number 1.
I was gonna say, is it just hashtag 1?
Yeah. Or you could spell hashtag and then do the actual hashtag number 1. Like it.
Oh, look at this guy thinking.
All right.
Some are saying big brains over here. Not many, but some.
Let's not forget that we say we're the number one sports podcast on these platforms, but don't fact check us.
Don't fact check us. Haven't been cease and desisted yet on said comments, so we're gonna keep rolling with it.
Claims.
Yeah, quit making claims. And I don't know if you guys hear that coming down the alley there. Sounds like it's gaining momentum, and sounds like there might be some pins that might be dropping. Just
now that you mentioned it, I'm getting like a faint nacho cheese smell out this way.
Out there.
I think you guys are going to need to get off of somebody's bowling lane right now, because it sounds to me like you're talking about that you're about to get hit by a hard bowling ball. So get off there.
We're going
yell at
bowling. We are going bowling. The Nebraska Cornhuskers, after 8 long, miserable years of not getting to a postseason chance. Matt Rule,
mostly miserable.
Mostly miserable. There were some, I don't know if you want to call them shiny spots. So there's something in there that might have been enjoyable for a couple times.
That period between hiring Scott Frost and him coaching, fantastic.
Those vibes
on top of the world,
off the charts. And then we figured out, this might not go well.
Hey, hold on. That first year of his tenure was at least quite hopeful. Yes, we lost a lot that year, but we were all like, no, it's going to take a little bit to get things righted. Boy, were we wrong.
I mean, if we're going to be honest, the Akron game getting canceled by lightning was probably a sign.
I couldn't have pictured a better sign from God.
Hindsight being
literal neon flashing lights all around Memorial Stadium saying don't do this.
Hindsight being 2020, yes, that probably should have been the sign.
And if you're like me, drinking these sweet, sweet tears of a Wisconsin beer in my hand right here of some Spotted Cow, drinking these sweet, sweet tears of Wisconsin Badgers that we handily kicked in all sorts of sports this weekend. And there was really only 2. It was volleyball and football, but nonetheless.
But most of them.
Was there like a quiz bowl or anything? I know it's not necessarily sports, but maybe Wisconsin came for like quiz bowl in Nebraska or something. So
if we did, we probably beat them too, because that was the vibe this weekend.
I mean, we had their number this time around finally, which is something we haven't been able to say for 12 years?
Oh yeah,
20. I think it's that.
Been a couple.
I think it was 12 years, 11 or 12 years since we last beat them.
I mean, since we're on this topic real quick, we might as well just dive.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to
go backwards.
I was going to go straight into the immaculate vibe weekend.
I was going to bury the lead with some stick puck first.
Oh,
not this time.
Nate.
You know what's funny though, and we'll get there, but like not only was the sports weekend great for Husker fans and like college football wise and volleyball wise, but like I think the rest of our teams also upheld their ends of the bargain. So I would say we had a pretty. I guess I don't remember.
We don't apologize for wins, Nate.
Stick puck in orange.
Oh yeah,
stick.
Or his other professional Minnesota
did not turn out too well.
Oh, I was gonna say I can't say too much. My NBA team was on they're on not a bye week, but they're on like a 5-day break. So they don't play until sometime
Tuesday
shortly.
It's like the Thunder plays
back tomorrow.
The Thunder play Monday, which is tonight. But they have not played since we last talked, so nothing's really happened. Which is why vibes were great this weekend.
Many things have happened for the Minnesota team, but we'll get to that in the not NCAA football season.
Correct.
Yes, correct. Back to the good vibes.
Back to the good vibes. Yes. In all seriousness, and I mean we're this is a celebration just because it's like I said, it's been a long 8 years that we've been able to say that Nebraska is finally bowl eligible for first times, and we can finally start getting rid of since Mike Riley, since 2016, we can finally start getting rid of those stats, those streaks of, oh, Nebraska hasn't been good since then, and when, and all of that kerfuffle there. It's now 2024 Matt Rule stamp era that we can start referring back to going forward. There's still going to be other streaks that, we can might have to break at some point, but we're now bowl eligible. We got the monkey off the back, and Rule is. I mean, we all saw it. If you watch his post game, if you watch the immediate after the game, if you watch his post presser, and even a little bit today, I mean, you can just tell how much emotion that he knew that just getting this win meant. Especially just the seniors at their last day at Memorial Stadium, their last game, beating Wisconsin for God knows how long, winning the Freedom Trophy for the first time, which I also did not realize that was a thing. I thought that was just ever since we started playing Wisconsin. It turns out that trophy was not, in fact, instated until after Nebraska's last win against Wisconsin. So Nebraska's literally never won that trophy before until now.
Corporate trophy.
Yeah.
Not a real trophy.
Not like the $5 bits of broken chair one.
Correct.
That is the best trophy.
The only trophy.
No one else can convince me otherwise.
That one, I mean, this is kind of off. It's on topic, but like not really relevant to anything we need to talk about. But like, I don't know, that whole trophy thing. And I know we haven't won it for so long, so that's probably part of it. It's just apathetic at this point. But like, I don't care about that one. Like, I don't have a problem inherently with Wisconsin, especially now that we finally won against them and one-handedly, by the way.
Right. But yes, Nebraska on senior night, last game of Memorial this season, like Zach said, handedly beat Wisconsin 44-25 in the hopeful future promise of what we can hope to see from Dana Holgorsen in this offense. Obviously, we're going to find out more after the Iowa game of just his future here at Nebraska, whether it's going to be more permanent or if we're looking for another offensive coordinator going forward. But yeah, Saturday was, and I know I texted you guys this too. It just was like, it was just almost, and I'm sure everybody in the fan base, the program, is just kind of like, it's an emotional weight that is just like automatically just lifted out of you, just lifted off your shoulders. And you can now start planning for a football game in December that Nebraska has not played, for 8 years plus. And you can start trying to plan around that now instead of just getting to the Iowa game and then you're like, well, season's done. Let's just go on to next offseason type talk. So, yeah, it's a lot happened. And I think the biggest thing, and our predictions were all off because I don't think any of us knew.
We predicted that we were going to win.
We did.
And we won. And the details are unnecessary and probably lost to
that we were all 20 points under of what we predicted.
Okay, hold on though. Timeout. We did all say that we thought this was going to be an ugly offensive game because we thought we would still be figuring it out. We didn't figure it was going to be figured out in that game, especially in the first quarter.
150-yard bombs, baby.
Well,
it worked.
I was just a week off.
It's essentially apparently we just need to be lowballing our score predictions and then hope that Nebraska can outshine them.
Yes.
Kind of like when you're trying to buy or sell something, you're negotiating. That's what we're doing here. We're negotiating the score of the Husker game. We're geniuses, actually. You're welcome, America.
That is the word we often use to associate us.
Yes.
Nebraska is mid again. You're welcome, America.
You're welcome.
We helped.
But it was a fun time Saturday. Obviously, we'll get to the volleyball and the basketball team in just a second, but it was just the emotion of, I mean, I teared up a little bit just knowing that it happened for the first time since we probably were all in college. At least for me, I know I would have been a junior in college or just starting my senior year in college, the last time that Nebraska went to a bowl game. So I know Nate definitely was in college. I don't know, Zach. I don't know if you were on the tail end of but
did we play it in 2016 or was it
it was a 2016 season? Because Riley got fired in the 2017 season.
Then no, I would have been out of college. Oh, yeah. Wow. Whew.
Yeah.
I'm old.
Man. And I mean, you could go through literally life changes that have happened in all of our lives since Nebraska last went to a bowl game. I mean, we literally
careful with
that. I've been sitting in this exact spot.
Someone's gonna start coming back. Someone's gonna start coming back and be like, "Oh, so that's the reason why we haven't got it." No. We're not going down that road. We are not getting into that.
Oh, but yeah, it was like I said, we all predicted Nebraska would win. We were just all about 20 points off of what we thought they were going to score. And we're not mad about it by any means. I think obviously the first takeaway is Dana Holgerson's offense in a span of 2 weeks really showed itself Saturday. I don't remember the last time that you could confidently say that a Nebraska offensive coordinator out-schemed another defense. The way that we did on Saturday. It's usually we get out-schemed on our defense by the other coach. And it's just one of those times that must be nice to have our offense go out and knowing that you're going to drive the ball on Wisconsin. And after those first couple of drives, Nebraska just did that because they scored a touchdown on the first drive and then you went punt and fumble. And then you're like, oh, well, what's Nebraska going to do the rest of the game? And then I think they punted once after the Janair Bonner fumble. Every other offensive drive, Nebraska scored points, whether it was a touchdown or field goal. But besides that last drive of the game, which is the kneel down, which we don't count. But from that point on, when it was 7-7, outside of one punt drive, Nebraska scored points on every other possession that it had, which is amazing. It's the most points that Nebraska has ever scored under the Matt Rhule era. Since it's against a Power 5 opponent, since Matt Rhule's been coach. It was the most first half points I think Nebraska has scored under Matt Rhule against a Power 5 opponent as well. So clearly, just in 2 short weeks, Dana was showing just what he was able to do. And I guess there's 3 or 4 different player of the games. You could go with Dylan, you can go with Emmett, you can go with Ja'Cory, and John Hull even. It's also one of the very few games that I knew, when we trotted out Hull, I'm like, I don't fear that he's going to miss this anymore. And he drilled the field goals handedly, like we have come to know from former Nebraska kickers when they go out there and you just have confidence, all right, they're going to make this field goal. So there's a lot of MVPs on the offensive side of the ball for who we think, could be the top player of the game, so on and so forth. But I think the biggest thing is Dylan looked a lot more comfortable in Dana's offense compared to. I mean, he looked like Dylan from the first 2 to 3 games. He looked like Dylan from the first half of the Illinois game. Just reading the defense, getting. I mean, and I know I said this last week. There's been more of an emphasis on Dylan getting the ball out early, and just hitting his receivers on slants, reading the zone. I mean, Jamal Banks the past 2 weeks has been more involved than he probably has been since like the first 2 games of the season. He clearly, it sucks that, you got 2 games left to see, what more they could do rather than if this had been sustained all season. But it's nice to see that Dana is working with what he's got with Dylan at quarterback. And you saw as the game went on, Dylan just got more confident with each throw, each pass. And the offense just ran so smooth from start to finish. And Emmett had the game of his life. And I know we could sit here and talk about why wasn't he RB1, the entire year just based on one game that he did. And there still might be questions about that of how they did the running back rotation throughout the year, considering what Emmett did on Saturday. But I still think Dondell, he's a good change of back for Emmett too. Dondell had 3 scores? I think he scored all 3 of those touchdowns when he was put in the game. And he's definitely your goal line running back, but he's a bruiser, and that's why you have him. I know I've made the comparison to him to Monty Cross, from time to time this season. So those were my first initial thoughts is euphoria. Nebraska finally did something that we have longed and waited to see. I know when we first started doing this, if you remember, when we were just Nebraska abilities, we picked a hell of a time to start with the Scott Frost firing year. Fantastic way for us to go into that season. And then we've been sitting on pins and needles at the end of each year, wondering when Nebraska's going to make a bowl game. And if you were lucky enough to watch us on our live stream last year against Iowa, and watch that last fateful drive with Chubba Purdy throwing an interception.
And of course, us ending that stream on man, what happened if we would have played Chubba all year?
Right. And now the future. Yes, we could look at this as one sample game against Wisconsin, but it's hard not to be excited and hyped about what we saw on Saturday of just 2 weeks of a new offensive coordinator and a revised Dylan Raiola again, of what we were hopeful and what we were seeing the first couple of games of the year is now we get him on the back half of the year, and just what can he do in 2 more games? Just as Dana and Dylan and the whole offense seems to finally start hitting its groove when it needs to. So with that, your guys' thoughts on anything about Saturday and why Dylan's animation of bowling was the best thing you've ever seen.
Go for it, Nate.
As someone who tuned into the game with about 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, I was pretty happy about where it was at the moment. So I didn't really get to go through the highs and lows of that game. I know there were a couple turning points. It sounded like that could have gotten a little shaky, especially when it was 7-7 there in the first. But from what I heard, the clips I have seen afterwards, Nebraska took care of business essentially. I don't have too much detailed specific commentary, but I will continue to rehash the point that it's crazy what can happen when an offensive coordinator actually plays to the strength of the players and puts them in position to be successful. So as we see, 44 points against a Wisconsin team that allowed 16 points to Oregon?
Yes. To the number one team.
Again, one game sample on both ends there, but in a vacuum, that's pretty decent company to be in.
And I just looking at their schedule, that's the most points Wisconsin's given up all year. Yep. Alabama scored 42, USC scored 38, Penn State scored 28, Iowa scored 42, obviously Oregon 16. So That was the most points Wisconsin's ever given up all season. And it was a second week offensive coordinator in charge that did it. So
crazy.
Yeah. Crazy is right, Nate.
And we weren't even looking for that. We were just looking for better than what we had.
And we got more.
For yourself, I was looking for 150-yard bombs.
I'm just saying our bar was not necessarily set at the highest level. He just decided to jump clear over it.
True.
But yeah, it looks like we got a lot of guys involved. Jamal Banks, Jacory Barney had a great game. Emmett Johnson was very active on rushing and in the receiving game. Mm-hmm. It's like Isaiah Nair had some catches, even got Isaiah Garcia Castaneda and Aaron Bonner in there. So he was getting the ball around to different guys, and they were making plays, it sounds like. And just, again, weird that the offense actually works when you allow it to work. So that's
right.
That's beautiful to see. Hopefully they keep the momentum going. I mean, it is a short week, and going into Iowa, and there's a lot of, like, as we mentioned, the monkey off the back. The pressure is like, if we got the bowl game, all this, that. There is still another game to go. And so you don't, like, obviously it's great. We're making progress. We're getting, making moves here, but
right.
You don't want to fall flat against Iowa and then have your kind of whole bowl practices just be like, wow, are we, like, do we deserve to be here? So,
I think Rule said it perfectly today in his presser it was alluding to, like you said, the pressure's off the program, getting that bowl win. And you can now go into the game against Iowa on Friday and just play football. You don't have to worry about the amount of pressure of needing a 6 win, of trying to play the absolute perfect amount of football. And that's when the mistakes come, when you do try to do too much. As he was just like, yeah, it's going to be cold. It's going to be just a football type of weather game. And you can just go in and just play football and not worry about, obviously you don't want to lose, and you especially don't want to lose to Iowa. You don't want to give off that message like, I don't care if we win or lose, but you don't have to go in with needing a win on that, and that pressure again on you for the 8th straight year. So, that's Rule said it perfectly today.
Yep. I'm just hoping not to see like a Indiana type game where it's like, obviously opposite kind of vibes. Like, we're just kind of elated. We got over the hump. We don't really need to participate in this one and get out of here. And I don't think that'll happen, but you never know what. It's exhausting emotionally to get this monkey off the back and be where they're at. So, but not to overshadow everything. We're going bowling, fellas. And the projections, I think you said the Mayo Bowl, and I think I saw the Pinstripe Bowl was the other one.
Pinstripe Bowl,
ESPN has this.
The formerly known as the Outback Bowl is an option too. I don't know what it's called anymore. And then whatever one's at Phoenix are options right now. And whether, you could still be 6-6 to get in any of those bowls. 7-5 definitely gets you a chance to get closer to like a New Year's Eve type bowl. But those are the ones that I've seen so far. Obviously, I think we speak for all of us that the Mayo Bowl or the Pop-Tart Bowl would be duos.
Pop-Tart Bowl's number one for sure.
Yeah. That'd be easily 1-2, whichever way you want to seat them in terms of which type of bowl Nebraska wants to go to. I would love to see Rule either get dumped with Mayo or eat a Pop-Tart. Either one. Doesn't matter.
I feel like those are two very different things.
Both are great content.
You can either get dunked with mayo, which is a whole thing in and of itself, or eat a Pop-Tart. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Both are great options. And I hope Nebraska gets one of them.
Or the third one could be we bring back the throwback bowl of what was like the Foster Farms. Is that the last one we were in?
Yes. Against UCLA.
They had like that annoying commercial every 10 seconds.
Well, here's the thing. I don't care. I don't think it matters what bowl we get, because anything on, like, when I think we all watch on YouTube TV, it's all the same 10 commercials anyway.
Yeah,
so we just get the same. We get the same. I'm just glad they finally shortened that blood donation one that they had at the beginning of the year, when that was like 2.5 minutes long. They finally got like, hey, we're doing a good thing. Donate blood today. Like, oh, thank you.
I should keep track of how many YouTube TV commercials I get for YouTube TV during the game.
Oh yeah,
Netflix is like the king of that. I'll be watching a show. They're like, hey, by the way, did you know that Netflix has really good shows? I'm like, I'm here, man.
I'm literally on your platform.
It's like going to McDonald's and be like, I would like 10 chicken nuggets, please. Did you also know that we have great McChickens? Like, yep. Yes, but I want the chicken nuggets.
That's not what I want.
But yeah, that's like I said, I didn't get to watch. We're making progress. Moves are being made. Dana Holgerson has revived the offense. Wasn't a flash in the pan, probably. They will actually be 150-yard bombs next week, or Friday, I guess. That's a guarantee from the #1 sports podcast in the industry.
Yes. You could actually say today, because we'll record this and we'll release it on Friday. So for those that listen to the podcast when it comes out before the game, boom, there it is.
So it is a quote unquote night game at Kinnick Stadium on NBC. 6:30.
So as you're listening to this, you've got all day, so you better have started this early, otherwise. Yes. You're not gonna be able to make it. Otherwise, you're gonna have to turn the game on mute while you listen.
Settings is like in the bottom right corner usually. Probably 5 times is probably a good speed if you're crunch time. So
5 times speed. Oof.
You're right.
Sound like Alvin and the
Chipmunks might be better.
Or what?
It might be a little quick. Just try 1.5 or 2 times first. Let's
finish your guys' episode in about 2 minutes. Like, what did you take away from it?
I believe the saying is "go big or go home." So 100 times or bust.
What'd you guys take from it? You guys talk fast. Not normally.
Well.
It was a busy week. What do you mean? Busy week. But yeah, those are my comments. Nebraska's back. No one can take that away from us.
No. To what you said earlier, though, Nate, in terms of like the turning points of the game, definitely there were like a couple definitely in the first half. The first one was when Nebraska fumbled. It was a goofy play. I mean, the play design was awesome where you had Dylan roll out and there was nobody open, and it's kind of what Kansas City does, to where if there's nobody open and then Dylan does like the underneath shovel to the tight end or like trailing big receiver that's right there, that's checking down a block, and then he's open and free. And that's what kind of happened is he rolled out, nobody's open, but then Shania Bonner blocks it, then breaks free, and Dylan kind of underhanded shovel. Shania kind of caught it, running behind him, and then he turned around, got hit, ball came loose, and they're like, oh, Wisconsin gets the ball immediately back in plus territory. Nebraska holds them to a field goal. Delay a game on the first kick that Wisconsin makes, so they go back 5 yards, and then he misses the field goal. And then Nebraska proceeds then to score a touchdown on after the missed field goal. And if you look at all the times that Wisconsin either like any sort of turnover or turnover on downs, anything like that, or a missed field goal, Nebraska scored points. So that first missed field goal, they came down and scored a touchdown. The second missed field goal, Nebraska came down and scored a touchdown. And then famously at the end of the half, which I don't know what Luke Fickell is doing. I know Zach knows what I'm talking about. So Nebraska scores a touchdown with that was the Jamal Banks toe tapper with 20 seconds left before the end of the half. Nebraska kicks off. Wisconsin's got the ball with 17 seconds left and 2 to 3 timeouts. And I'm like, okay, maybe they try to take a couple shots, see if they kind of get within field goal range and kick a field goal before half. They run the ball. And I'm just like, okay, weird choice. And if you remember that Miami game, I think it was last year, where they ran the ball instead of kneeling it, and then whoever they were playing came back and scored and won the game. That exact scenario happened at the end of the first half, where they ran the ball, fumbled, Nebraska got it back, got a play to get 12 yards, kicked a field goal, and then it was a 10-point swing in 30 seconds at the end of the half.
I love that for them.
It baffles me because if Fickell was just going to run the clock, why wouldn't you just kneel the ball? Because Nebraska had no timeouts at that point. So like we couldn't intentionally stop the clock, and we were going to get the ball at half anyways. So I don't know. Were we?
And it's not like they were pinned.
No, we didn't. We weren't going to get the ball at half because we got the opening kickoff. But yeah, I don't know what Fickle was doing because it cost them 3 points in that scenario. And Nebraska, instead of going 21-10, goes 24-10 at a half, and a huge momentum swing there. But then if you look at the other drives that, Wisconsin turned it over on downs after their first drive of the second half. Nebraska came down and scored a touchdown, and then after that, it was kind of back and forth touchdown until the end of the game where Wisconsin threw the interception at the end. But it was very, very weird coaching management from Fickle's side. But Nebraska made the most out of their opportunities. I think they scored 19 points or 24 points off of Wisconsin, turnover or downs or missed extra points, where Nebraska immediately got the ball back and went down to score, which haven't been able to say that all year. I don't know the last time Nebraska has been able to boast about scoring points after a missed opportunity on the other end, because that's usually the sort of thing that happens to Nebraska, where we turn it over and then we immediately give up points or anything like that. So to be able to flip the script in that point, and Nebraska flipped the script in a lot of things that game where we usually do at the end, where I think it was the very last touchdown drive that Nebraska had where Wisconsin had 3 personal fouls on that drive. One was for the unnecessary roughness, and then the face mask, and then the DPI, all on that drive, which then led to, I think, Dowdell's 3rd touchdown of the game. So, I mean, we're so accustomed to having that happen to us, because it does happen to us almost every single close game that we've ever lost. So the fact that it happened to another team that was just as mentally fragile and weak as we were going into that game, Nebraska just turned the tables and turned the tides on a lot of different things in that game, which was so nice for once. It wasn't necessarily stress-free. I mean, at the end, Wisconsin, when they scored those 2 long touchdowns, they did it in under 2 minutes. And I was like, oh, I don't like how quickly they scored, which I was like, well, we're still up 2 to 3 scores, but I don't like how quickly they scored in terms of what happened. But Nebraska came down and scored anyway. So we still kind of maintained a 2 to 3 score lead throughout the entire second half. But it got a little shaky at times. And I was like, I'm still not worried. But if Nebraska comes out and does this 3-and-out thing we're so accustomed to, and then they go and score again, then you're talking about a touchdown or less game, and you're like, uh-oh, here it goes again. But yeah, it was all that to be said. Nebraska took advantage of the missed opportunities by Wisconsin, the poor coaching management, the inability for Wisconsin to convert on downs when they needed to in Nebraska's defense. Like we had talked about, Zach, that first half, there were times where they couldn't get stops when they needed to. Wisconsin did score a touchdown or a field goal on some of those drives. When you had 3rd and 6 or 3rd and 4, and you just needed a stop, Nebraska's kind of been doing that all year, where they just can't get stops when they need to. But the defense made enough stops in this game to just keep themselves in the game. And it's just, it was weird to know that our offense could just go on the next drive and score points, because we haven't been accustomed to that. I've never been if we stop them here, if we don't give up a field goal, we're going to go down and score a touchdown. I don't know the last time we've been able to try to say that in a game at all. Not recently, at least. So it was refreshing, but it was a fun game. That's all I'm going to say. With that, Zach,
I don't really have much more to fill in, I guess.
Your euphoric takes.
I mean, it was like you said, you both kind of said, getting the monkey off the back is the big thing. Now I feel like the 2 things that you take from it are they know they can do it because they did it, but they can do it continuously now, as in, going into next year, it's like we did it once. We know what it takes to do it. Let's do it again, do better, get better and better. But then also, now they can play more freely. I feel like now, there's not so much added pressure to get that bowl game, which, you both hinted at already or talked about already. So, I mean, to that point, it's already, they've done it. So now they get to ride out the rest of the year pretty much successfully, even if they lose to Iowa, which would suck if they lose to Iowa. But I think I guess if Nebraska keeps stopping the run, we have a good chance of stopping Iowa too.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we'll see how that goes.
And obviously, a lot is to be made of Iowa right now, and they're starting their third string quarterback. McNamara said he might be back for the game, but I think Kirk said at the end of the game, like when they played Maryland, that Stratton or whoever their quarterback now is going to be the starter against us on Friday. So Iowa didn't really need to pass the ball either, because Caleb Johnson's like a really good running back, and if you don't know, he averages like I think almost 200 yards. Well, no, 180 something yards a game. Their entire team averages like 213 rushing yards a game, which is, again, no surprise. That's Iowa football. But Caleb Johnson's a really good running back. He's already got 1,000 rushing yards on the season. He's 15 touchdowns. He's averaging about 6.7 yards a carry, which is quite a lot.
That's a couple.
That's quite a lot.
More than a couple for the year. So I think what Nebraska doesn't have to worry about is Wisconsin kind of runs an RPO. So you saw at times where like Braden Locke, he did air it out against us, and our secondary continues to still be somewhat of a problem. But Iowa's offense is not an RPO type of offense. It is a run first, and then you can pass. So Nebraska, again, has been hit and miss on stopping the run when it needs to this year. But if you can pull out the run defense like you did against Ohio State and, stop two future NFL caliber running backs, if you pull that out against Iowa and make their third string quarterback pass the ball on you, which, again, he had like 76 passing yards against Maryland. And I don't think he's had that many even the game prior against UCLA. So if you can stop Iowa and stop the run and make them pass the ball, Nebraska has a really good shot to just keep it a low-scoring game on Iowa's side and then hope that your offense does what it did against Wisconsin again, and then you don't have to worry about it. And, you put Iowa in a situation to have to pass to try to get points as quickly as you can, and that might not be a recipe that they want to do in terms of trying to win a game. So, it's obviously it's always tough to beat Iowa. Last time we did it was 2 years ago. Probably should have done it last year too. Arguably, we beat them with a worse team 2 years ago than we did last year. But it's gonna be a cold game. It's gonna be a not for fun game because we are bowl eligible. But like we had said earlier, you don't want to let up on the gas just because you're bowl eligible already. You still want to take it to your rival. And especially like in Iowa where, they've had your number a lot in this series since we've joined the Big Ten. So time to instill the Matt Rule future is now era with Dylan Raiola into Iowa sphere and make Kirk retire on spot.
Oh,
I do think though, to that point, I think Nebraska is going to at least have a better chance of doing like what Matt Rule constantly preaches about, like, mistakes are going to happen, forget about it, go on to the next play. I think now that they've got the bowl game, they'll be able to do that more.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's what I mean, playing freely, but we'll see. I think it's going to be really interesting. The Iowa game is going to be, we've seen what Nebraska can do in a win against Wisconsin and then again in that real close loss against Ohio State. It's like we've seen the pieces of what a good football team that Nebraska can look like.
Mm-hmm.
And I would argue for the most part against Wisconsin, they did it outside of the first, I'll argue the first half up until that very last like minute and a half where it seemed like Nebraska's offense somehow comes out of nowhere and they're like on fire and they're able to do everything. But then, of course, the one side of the ball that we've been able to be pretty reliant on in the defense decides, we're not going to play today. And I'm just sitting there in the whole time saying, of course, now our offense figures it out. But then our defense just decides to be like, nah, we don't need to do this.
Right.
It's like, really? Oh, come on.
And
thankfully, they did everything in their power in that second half to be like, no, we've got it. So
And
that was the other thing that I took from it, was that there were needed halftime adjustments, but clearly we took them.
Yeah,
that was nice.
And you also kind of wonder if Rule didn't make the switch, what type of game Saturday turned out even to be for Nebraska. I mean, do you even sniff 20 points in somewhat capacity?
Screen.
Yeah, Satterfield is commonplace. It's just like, obviously, it's something I don't want to think about, but
don't have to now.
Don't have to. And there was a real-time possibility after UCLA that like, oh crap, like we're staring at 5-7 down the barrel again for the second straight year after getting to 5 wins early in the season. So yeah, don't have to think about that. But
thank the Lord.
Again, if you hear that low rumbling just coming down the alley behind you, don't fear, don't be afraid, don't turn around. Just know that it is the big red train coming for those pins to strike a bowl game for whoever they're gonna play.
Am I allowed to be afraid if there's not an alley behind me?
Yeah,
that sounds a little concerning.
Only a little concerning.
Okay. Only a little concerning.
Like I said, if you're in the middle of somebody's bowling alley or lane, you might want to get out of it. But if you are not and you hear that rumble,
but I see a shiny black object rolling towards me.
That's probably nothing. Just
that may or may not be a bowling ball. I don't know.
May or may not.
Truly no way to know.
Truly no way to know. Last Husker point we'll make today that we now know is official, and we kind of heard the rumblings last week that immaculate Coleman is going to transfer at the end of the season. Once the portal opens, I think December 9th or something like that, which is no surprise considering he redshirted and didn't really get much involvement in terms of talking practices. You kind of had a feeling that, he was going to transfer unless Rule had convinced him that, there's a future spot on his team going forward. And that was kind of their hope. But, Malachi put out a statement saying like, this is for the best. This is, for my future career. And, we wish him all the best. And yeah, it sucks to lose an in-state guy, definitely an in-city guy nonetheless, from Lincoln East. So, always going to be rooting for him. And, when he did have some big plays last year, we are obviously so happy for him. But that brings up kind of a larger point that he's going to be probably one of many guys that we're going to see transfer or hit the portal or either leave the team once the roster limits go into effect. I don't know exactly when they go into effect, but I know going forward there's going to be a 105 or 108 roster limit. 105 for next season. So that precious walk-on program that Nebraska loves to tout when you get, 140, 150 roster spots, unfortunately, you're going to have to slack a lot of those guys. So I don't want to say it's a blessing in disguise because, it's Malachi is definitely somebody that you could have seen, be a big star in the future, definitely with Dylan and everything. But it's going to be a flurry of guys that we're going to see at the end of the season after the Iowa game hit the portal, just because it's the way of college football now is these teams are going to have to cut roster size and limits. So there might be guys that hit the portal or try to go somewhere else that we were like, oh, why are they transferring out of Nebraska? They, it's a big name that we heard or anything like that. It's primarily because there might not be spot on Nebraska's roster for them going forward of what Rule and Holgerson or what Tony want to do with that. So that's just one name. Obviously, it's a big local name that we all cared about and wish him the best. But that'll be something that we're probably going to see after the Iowa game of people opting out of the bowl. Yeah, the exodus of people opting out of the bowl game at practices to put themselves in the portal and transfer to a different school and everything. So,
see, I think that's going to backfire. Like the 105 thing sucks for Nebraska, regardless. But I think it's going to suck for every football team that's out there because in my head, I'm sitting there like using Malachi Coleman as the example, which admittedly sucks to see him go, but I don't think was a huge miss at that point. But it is a miss because he is an in-state guy, but like, I'm not, we're not seeing the results come from him. So is what it is. And he was hurt, so that doesn't help either. Mm-hmm. But then all these other teams are also going to be dropping a bunch of players. So you're really paring down to the 105 best you got. So yeah, you can transfer. Go ahead. Understood. I get that, but you might not have anywhere to go.
Right.
Like if he didn't play this year, and not just Malachi, but like there are other people that didn't play this year as well. And I'm just like, I don't think this is going to work out. It should have been like over the course of like 2 years where whatever they're on now, 150, go to 125, then 105. But
yeah.
Oh, well, what do I know?
It sucks. Yeah. Like we said, especially with Nebraska, it's very proud tradition and history of the walk-on program of being able to have a roster that size is now one, you're really going to have to be picky with transfer portal additions going forward of who you want, recruits that you want in your class. You could probably still have classes of up to 25 or 30 in size, but you might have to be a little bit more picky of offering guys of you can't just go out and offer people just to get a big class anymore. Not that they were doing that in the first place, but just kind of give it a hypothetical. But you're just going to have to be more picky of who you take out of the portal and who you choose to recruit going forward, knowing that there is a limit of the roster space now with that. So it does kind of suck, but it's not just it's going to affect everybody in college football. And obviously we're just covering from the Nebraska standpoint that we know more about, but it's going to be a lot of these teams that go through the struggle too of who have walk-ons that they're going to have to cut and unfortunately say, it might have chances to go somewhere else and play, but we don't have the space for you anymore because of these rules. So yeah, it was more of a don't be surprised if we see some other known names that we have known from the team kind of enter the portal after the Iowa game or opt out of the bowl game to transfer, so on and so forth. It's the way the college football is going now, unfortunately, and nothing we can do about that other than tell the NCAA to stop being wussies.
Just wait until we start getting GMs for college football rather than just being like the head coach. You get an actual roster manager and everything for that's at that point. Then once that starts happening, then it's boom, NFL light or whatever you want to call it at that point.
We're like 95% of the way there.
We're basically there. There's a couple key things I think missing before we officially get there, but
and
the NCAA is just a farm league.
Yeah, it kind of is. Especially now that we're paying players, it's always kind of weird to think of the NCAA as like a minor league to NFL because it's never associated or like branded like that. Where the major league has the minor league and the NBA has the cheat league. Like those are legit farm systems for pro teams. It's never really been like branded as the NCAA is a minor league to get people into the NFL. Like there's never been an association like that. Now with NIL and like you said, Zach, like I would put out the question of, there be some sort of hierarchy governing body of ownership, rosters, NIL going forward for colleges that kind of manage all this stuff. And it's all on the table now that everything that was under the table is now legal going forward. So it's a weird time for college athletics, definitely. And could say the same thing about the college football playoff and the massacre that happened this past Saturday.
And with that,
everything that we had talked about last week on the pod, scrap that segment, toss it out the window. Doesn't matter anymore because everything that we thought was going to happen kind of did happen, but more happened than we thought was going to happen. It started off, I think Ole Miss was the first one to go down against Florida, which, LOL, very, very funny that one, Billy Napier happened, and two, that Lane Kiffin lost to Florida with that. And then, this happened at the same time as the Nebraska game, but Colorado losing to Kansas, also very funny. Colorado had everything in their destiny to win, keep themselves in the playoff, keep themselves in the Big 12 race. Then they lose.
And then a big blue Jayhawk came knocking on
the door. Well, meanwhile, the devil showed up to the Mormon doorstep.
Ooh. I love that.
That's pretty clever.
That is very clever.
Because it is spot on. BYU loses to Arizona State and essentially knocks themselves out of the college football playoff.
Hilarious fashion, apparently.
Yes. And I only know this because, again, this game was happening at the same time as Nebraska, where they were tearing down the goalpost, but there were still 6 seconds or a second left of the game, and the refs were trying to get people off the field, get the goalpost literally back up to keep playing the game.
And then I think BYU either had a Hail Mary that went for a lot of yards or almost completed one for a touchdown that would have won. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
And then you had the nightcap to cap that off of Auburn and A&M, which hand up. I think Auburn heard me last week. I said they were not good and that Hugh Freeze was a bad coach. Still might be true. But they pulled off the triple overtime upset over A&M, which again hurts.
Four?
Yeah, it's 4.
Or 4, yeah. 4 overtime upset over A&M, which hurts A&M's chances in the playoff. But then the SEC did this cool thing and said, oh, yeah, Georgia's already clinched a spot in the championship, and now the winner of Texas and Texas A&M gets a spot in the SEC championship. So A&M's not totally out of it yet, but definitely hurt their chances to make an at-large bid if they don't.
Are we sure? I mean,
I'm sure they're not going to put A&M in. Are you shitting
They're not
me?
going to put
no. I'm
A&M
saying
over Bama.
you were saying, oh, it's between Texas and Texas A&M at that point. Like, they still have
no,
a chance
for
to get in.
No,
To make
like
it to the SEC
to make it to the SEC championship.
Yeah.
Still, I mean,
like the winner of that game will go to the SEC championship.
Right. That's what I mean.
Georgia.
Like at this point, you can probably almost pencil that one in.
Well, yeah,
that's what I'm
it's gonna be
saying.
Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
Like you can't. Obviously, the game has to be played, but you can
Yes.
probably pencil that one in.
But you probably can. So yeah, there were some funny upsets there. And did you guys see how Rutgers lost the game?
I did not. That was a morning game, right?
Yes, it was. So Illinois was lining up for a 50-ish yard field goal. They were down 32-31 with 8, 9, 10 seconds left somewhere at the fourth quarter. Kicker kicks it, misses it. But Greg Schiano calls a timeout prior to the field goal after he missed it. Belima saw that and said, I'm not going to try to kick it again. I'm going to run play just to try to score a touchdown. Pat Bryant scores a 54-yard touchdown at the end of the game. Illinois wins 38-31 against Rutgers.
Oops.
Schiano's probably kicking himself, obviously.
Nebraska would never.
Nebraska would never. You're right, Zach. Definitely do not look back to the last time we played BYU. Do not look at that at all. Please don't.
All I'm saying is Nebraska would never do either of those things.
Never. Why would you keep saying it, Zach?
Just saying. I'm setting precedent for our bowl game. Nebraska won't or will never.
No. And then obviously the big primetime game that everybody was looking forward to, I guess. I mean, I kind of was a little bit just to see if Indiana was on fraud watch. But Indiana goes in, gets smacked around by Ohio State in the second half. And
Indiana is on fraud watch, but the SEC is making them less on fraud watch.
Yes. If you were Indiana, losing to Ohio State was bad, but having literally everybody else below you lose in fashion probably helped your playoff chances a lot. I don't think Indiana could have asked for a better bloodbath Saturday than what happened in terms of top college, top bubble teams below them losing. Now, still remains to see if they'll get in, but it helps their case a lot knowing that 9, 12, 14, 15, 16 teams below them all lost. All those bubble teams that were on the fringe. And now probably keeps Indiana's playoff chances alive still. Regardless, it's probably I think it's now gonna be Ohio State I don't think it's
Penn State has a chance, I think.
Yeah, but I think it probably depends on if Ohio State loses to Michigan.
Yeah.
So it's not official, but it's probably going to be Oregon, Ohio State for the Big Ten championship again, unless Ohio State loses to little brother Michigan this next. Was it Friday or Saturday? Either or.
Saturday, their big game.
Saturday. Yeah. So
for the 18th week in a row.
Yeah. Probably won't lose, but
I get why they do it. I understand it makes money, but Big Noon is just such a weird. It's just such a weird primetime thing for me.
Especially because they were also Big Noon this last week with Indiana. Like 8 night games are cool too, guys. Hey,
especially in Happy Valley. Yep. Like Penn State at noon, gross. Like that looks awful on TV.
And I feel like going into that game or this game, you can be like, okay, that one will probably be a good night game regardless, unless Penn State took the biggest drop off in history ever. Bigger than
Minnesota almost beat them.
I'm just saying at the beginning.
I was so close on a pick.
Minnesota won, led the majority of that game too.
I mean, the Indiana one, no one really knew they were going to be as on fire as they were. So it's I can kind of see why that one was penciled in as Big Noon, just because this could be an interesting story.
Mm-hmm.
It was, but Penn State, or Ohio State should 100% be a night game. But
yeah.
Whatever.
And unfortunately, our nation's heroes got curb stomped to Notre Dame.
Yeah, Notre Dame hates fun.
What a way to put that.
Yeah.
Our nation's heroes got curb stomped. Well,
there's no
back
better
to the drawing board.
to the drawing board. So we're not going to get a fun undefeated Army playoff discussion. A lot of things would probably have to happen for them to even get into the playoff now. But it was a fun discussion point last week while it lasted. But I don't think it's going to happen.
It lasted. Did I miss it, or did you also mention Alabama?
Oh no, I did not mention how.
I was going to say I feel like that one was big. It was a big deal.
Yeah, speaking of curb stomping, apparently Alabama going into Norman at night was not a good idea. And
what do you guys think? Because going back to Nebraska real quick, because I've seen a lot of people throwing out that an Oklahoma Nebraska bowl game would sell like hotcakes.
I've seen that.
I can see that.
I've seen Nebraska
Kansas
State. I've seen Nebraska LSU.
What? Oh man, that would suck.
Which that'd be the Music City Bowl.
That one would be rough.
That one would be rough. But yeah, I've seen like the Nebraska Oklahoma or like Nebraska Kansas if Kansas gets bowl eligible. Oh man. That would kind of scare me. I think Kansas might have an edge there.
I don't know because Kansas is
the hottest team in college football.
Yeah.
Kansas
like a fun Big 8 rivalry game again. I mean,
that would be great. Well, that's what I mean though. Is we're probably going to see a deal where it's bringing back an old rivalry as long as it's not Colorado.
Yeah, I don't want to get paired with like a 6-6 TCU. Like that's not. If you're going to make a storyline bowl game, at least make it a fun one. Don't pit us against like a random 6-6 Big 12 team that we don't have history with.
I would like to see Oklahoma.
Nebraska
I would like to
goes to Kyle Field to play Texas A&M for the bowl.
You know what? Would not be would not be at all surprised if that happens. Did you guys know last year?
They bid for the Out Big Bowl, and it's going to be hosted at Kyle Field.
Wait a minute. Yeah,
I
don't know.
It wouldn't surprise me anymore.
The Kansas game would be interesting though too, because I feel like Kansas is just like the same as us, where it's like 1 week they'll show up.
This is not the time to catch Kansas. It would have
exactly
the time to catch Kansas would have been if they were kind of like us, where like they were kind of up and down all year, but not just down and then suddenly upsetting every ranked team in their path now.
No, I'm not disagreeing, but on the flip side, it may not be the time to catch Nebraska either. Now that we finally did the thing, they might be like, "Oh, okay." Ways. It's like, "Oh, hey, like we actually know how to play this game now." Like, "Oh, good, we finally figured it out." You know what I mean? Yeah, that's why I think the Kansas matchup would be good, but Oklahoma is my vote if we stay like 6-6 or whatever.
Right.
If we go 7-5, no idea. At that point, I'll have to look at the matchups.
Jalen Daniels scares me though. He's actually good.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see. I mean, it should be coming out in like the next half hour on the college football playoff rankings, but
that's tonight. I thought it was tomorrow.
It's Tuesdays.
Unless they move it up for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, days of the week matter. Yeah, sure. I mean, just looking at like the AP top 25, I need to say this. I don't want Bama to make the playoff. But,
Nate, do you remember what you wrote last week as your criteria for making the playoff?
But Bama leapfrogging Clemson for the 12 spot would
That'd be really funny.
make me a little happy inside.
That would be really funny. But again, if we're going off Nate Rick's criteria, unless you're Georgia and Alabama.
I said that.
Is your name Georgia or Alabama? And then the two yes or no.
So
with
it's
the
possible.
S1, with the yes option B, make the playoff. The no being refer to the yes.
It just circles back to make playoffs anyway. I'm saying it right now though. I will bet money that Alabama's still in, even though they probably at this point shouldn't.
They shouldn't have. But if they played,
they're gonna lose the Iron Bowl to Auburn.
Like if they played how they played against Oklahoma,
yeah.
If they played like they did against Oklahoma to Auburn, there's no way they're getting in. Because one, that'd be their fourth loss, and two, they did not look anywhat remotely competent against Oklahoma on Saturday.
Yeah, but 4 SEC losses actually equates to 10 actual wins. So
quality SEC losses. There you go, Nate. I like that.
What is this? March Madness quad 1, quad 2 wins?
It's about
versus
to be
quad 1 losses.
No. It's the mental gymnastics and the mental pretzels they have to make to get them into the playoff. Like, well, you see. Like, no.
What would a 6-5 Oklahoma be? A quad 3 loss, quad 2 loss?
Better question: what would any of the losses to Nebraska be for those teams? Not that we've played any of these playoff teams. Well, we've played a couple, but like, you know what I mean? Like
when we were 5-1, this would have been quality Q1 losses. Since that streak, those went down real quick.
Well, now we're just talking semantics. That's beyond the point.
Yeah, that was so. To wrap it up with that, it's going to be very interesting to see what the committee does on Tuesday. I'm sure we'll all have our discussion points in our text about what actually happens and what the committee decides to do with the literal mid-tier teams that are not Oregon, Ohio State, Boise State, Miami. Teams that are literally not them going forward, because those didn't change. So those will still be your first automatic buys in terms of who gets the top 4 seeds, because they all won this past week. Boise barely won, but they did win. To Wyoming. Barely won, but they did win nonetheless.
That Mountain West could be interesting because UNLV is not.
They're ranked.
They're 9-2, like that. And then Tulane and Army, even though Army lost, like that'll be for the American. That'll be an interesting fight as well.
Right.
Yeah, Tulane is like one of my favorite college football stories this year. Just outright, just like okay, glad to see they're doing good.
I still remember when they beat USC. Was that 2 years ago or last year?
They beat Caleb Williams.
Yeah,
it would have been
in the Cotton Bowl, right?
Yes, some sort of bowl game.
Yeah, that was New Year's.
That was when USC could put up 50, but then was letting up 51. Like, Caleb Williams is such a good offense, but their defense is awful.
Has that changed that much? Like their defense looks a little better, but I don't know if it's necessarily changed. Like USC, I guess they did beat us. Whatever.
Well, hey, play us now. Play us 2-week Daniel Holgerson versus 1-week Daniel Holgerson.
Does the ACC have their?
Well, it's Miami. It's Miami and somebody else, right?
Is it Miami SMU? Because Clemson is.
Oh yes, it is. It's Miami SMU.
Hunt there.
SMU did tweet out on their football account that they're going to the ACC championship. So
I say SMU's undefeated, but Clemson and Miami are both have 1 loss in ACC play. So I don't know if
it is Miami and SMU in their championship. Which if SMU wins, then they take the automatic top seed away from Miami, and then that kerfuffles everything. Which, if we want chaos, that's what we're rooting for.
Yes.
It is also crazy to me to see Clemson at 9-2 overall, and they're still only 17.
Oh yeah, Miami isn't in yet.
No, I just assumed that they were.
No.
Well, it's SMU for sure.
Exciting times.
Yeah, because Miami still plays Syracuse. Clemson, I think, is an out-of-conference game. Yeah, they play South Carolina, so something to play for there. So that'll be interesting.
That'll be fun for them. Good for them.
All coming down to the end of the year. How about that?
And
then the Big 12, I think it's like a 3 or 4 way tie.
It is. That after Saturday, that whole thing got combobulated.
The second messiest conference behind the SEC.
Yeah, that. I mean, obviously we want chaos, but like if you're a Big 12 fan or a team that literally lost on Saturday that didn't need to lose, you're sweating now. Because you controlled your own destiny, aka Colorado, and now you don't. I mean, you still do, but like you just made it a lot worse.
Bunch of scrubs.
Because Kansas has nothing to play for other than bowl eligibility. So,
and Oregon State won the Pac-12.
They did, the 2-team conference between them and Wazoo.
Give them an automatic bid, cowards.
I hope they should. They really should. They won't, but they should.
They should.
All right. With that,
that's a lot of college football talk, boys.
But there was a celebration. We had to. This is unprecedented times on the podcast that we've never got to experience before, Zach.
It's true.
I was just thinking that too. We were talking a little bit ago about how Nebraska finally made a bowl game. So now that also means that Nebraska talk continues beyond after the Iowa game.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to know what to do.
We've never been in this position before.
I mean, to be fair, for like 2 of those weeks, it's going to be like Nebraska's practicing. Moving on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That is a good point though. Like, because when I was listening to Rule after the game, he said that like this time is important because you get like 15 extra practices, and I think he mentioned like Wisconsin's been like 5 or 6 straight years, and he said that's like 100+ practices that they've had extra to develop the guys at the end of the season.
They had a graphic that came up on, I think it was like in the 3rd quarter. And obviously, Nate, you didn't see this because you were not able to see until the end. But there was they said that same thing. I think Wisconsin has, since Nebraska has the last time they were at a bowl game, obviously they have had 0 since we haven't gone to a bowl game for 8 years. But then Wisconsin, by comparison, had 105. So that's huge in just the continual development of the players. So, and now, especially in the scheme of next year, we're only going to be able to have 105. So now you use kind of that bowl game and those extra practices to see who really is going to rise to the top.
Yeah, and the redshirt rule doesn't apply to bowl games. So you, in theory, could literally play anybody without any sort of like, if you have somebody that's like on the edge of a 3-4 game redshirt rule that you played these last couple of games, like you can.
My God, that's Malachi Coleman's music.
Yeah, won't be. Sadly, will not be on the practice music. Team. Yeah, but yeah. So redshirt rule doesn't apply for bowl games, so rule could roll out anybody that he wants to during the bowl game. So that would be. I don't know if he'll do it, but you know, the endless possibilities are there with that. But quick note. Who you guys got for the Class A state championship between Millard South and West Side?
Has it started yet?
About to. 11-1 Millard South versus undefeated West Side, who I think West Side's won the past 2 or 3 state championships.
I was going to say West Side.
The team that probably I don't think has lost in like 2 to 3 years.
Fine, call me crazy. What was the other one? Millard
South? Yeah.
Yeah, Millard South. What the hell?
Nah, I'm not going to Millard
South. Not bad.
No, it's going to be West Side.
With that, I think we can transition to, do we want to keep on the Husker train and just go straight to the upset over Creighton, or do we going to go other sports first and then come back?
Spoiler.
Whoa. Too late. Spoil it.
We're on it. You didn't give me a backup, Nate. So, so I went with Andy's pick.
We started with the end of the euphoric weekend. We're gonna start with what started it off on Friday night with Nebraska at number 14 Creighton in Omaha. And if you would have told me that we would have ended that game and held the literal Big Ten preseason player of the year, Big East player of the year, and probably preseason All-American Player of the Year, Ryan Kalkbrenner, to 4 points, with 4 of those points being free throws and 0 field goals made, I would have said he probably got hurt in like the first quarter or like the first 5 minutes of the game and never came back in.
Got to be rough being a scrub.
Yeah. And Nebraska, albeit took their blueprint, what they did 2 years ago when they beat Creighton 2 years ago in Omaha, and just applied it again, but with having more than one center that's not Derek Walker.
I have a question. Was that thing that they did, because I didn't get to watch the game, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, was the thing that they did score more points than Creighton?
Yes.
Awesome. That usually works out really well.
Yeah,
so.
that usually good things happen when you're on the higher scoring end of those points.
And don't forget the science behind it. The first team to 69 points also
always
proven.
Very much proven. Nate and I have tested this theory for many, many, many years in college basketball. The first team to 69 always wins the basketball game. So
always wins?
Always wins. Please do not fact check that.
Yep.
Okay.
Please do not fact check that always.
Cool.
But yes, Nebraska, like I said, took their blueprint of what they did 2 years ago to Creighton and applied it to this year. But instead of having just Derek Walker be your one center, you now had a rotation of 3 different tall men to double team Hassel Kalkbrenner and force Creighton to play outside of the perimeter, which is a very big risk, knowing that Greg McDermott has always had a really good 3-point shooting teams in the past, and Creighton literally lives and dies by the 3. And they did that on Friday, and it hurt them. I don't think I've ever seen a game. Yeah. I don't think I've ever seen a game where a team only took 10 shots that weren't 3-pointers. Creighton shot 42 3-pointers and only shot 10 inside the line field goals, which is an absolute insane strategy by Fred to live and die by that strategy and hope that it pays out. Because if Creighton hits 10 of those threes, not even 10, probably 5 of those threes, Nebraska loses that game by 3 or 4 points instead of winning by what did we win by 11, I think, which very nervy that Creighton made that last basket because the spread was 10.5. So the fact that Creighton did make a basket, but it didn't matter because they still won by 11, which a little sweaty to some bettors. Because the cup, it was Creighton minus 10.5 as the betting line for that. But regardless, Nebraska beats its biggest state rival, a team that has had your number for many, many recent years until Fred Hoiberg came onto the scene with his domination of defense. And it's always, I always get the comparison because when he was at Iowa State, he was definitely more of a run and gun type offense. And since he's gotten to Nebraska, he's realized he's had to change that, and he's definitely made his mentality more of a defensive specialty. It paid off. Like I said, you held Creighton to 63 points, and the fact that you held the reigning Big East Player of the Year and the preseason favorite this year to 4 points that were just field goals or free throw attempts was absolutely insane. There's no way I would have predicted that at all. But very, very good win. Nebraska also never trailed in that game. They took the lead from the start and led all 40 minutes, which absolutely insane to say that against the number 14 team in the nation. But
also sounds like that might be a good strategy.
It is a good strategy. It is a good strategy considering that in Nebraska to start the season has not been the best on offense in terms of trying to find, a guy. Bryce and Jawan are going to have their games. Either one of them or both of them are going to go off and be your point scoring leaders, but you don't have somebody that can go in and, average 25, 30 points a game. No big deal on this team. It's going to be probably whoever has the hot hand that night. Friday, Asijan had, I think, 13 or so points, had a couple big threes and buckets in the game. So, he wasn't the leading scorer. I think Jawan was with 16 points, but you're going to have games like that. And the fact that Nebraska can now confidently kind of rotate 3 big men between Burke, Morgan, and Maya, which again, Nate's favorite player.
Hey, he's a thick fella. He can push people around.
And he did. And that's, like I said, that's what you needed to do against Kalkbrenner in that game. And they did. And it worked successfully. Instead of, last year Nebraska had Rank Mask and Josiah Alec as your bruisers. But if one of them got in foul trouble, you have to play the other one. And then you're kind of SOL if that other guy gets in foul trouble. Now you can kind of confidently rotate 3 big men throughout the rest of the game. And Nebraska certainly ran into foul trouble in that game. I think Burke had 3 fouls in the first half, and Morgan and Maya, I think, had 2 early in the second half. So it's good to have that depth where if one of them gets in foul trouble, you can be confident enough to put a second big man in and be able to dominate the paint and push people around like Kalkbrenner. So nonetheless, Nebraska gets a big upset win. Was the start of the euphoric immaculate vibe weekend that we only were so naive to see that this was just the beginning of the incredible vibes for the start of the weekend. So
I'm going to be honest. When it started like that, I was like, well, shoot, there goes the rest of it. Like
we traded one for the
other.
Right. Like, it's like, that's where all the good vibes went, was to that. And then obviously I was wrong, and I'm glad to be wrong in this case, but I was definitely a little nervous going into the Husker football game. After that, we were like, well, all the mojo's gone. So,
right.
Yeah. I mean, my takeaways from the game were that we had 7 turnovers. They had 17.
And that is
also a good strategy. Have less turnovers on the other team.
Yep.
Guys,
and I know
we
Nate
could be coaches.
Yeah, we could be. We should be, actually. Once the
Patreon link is
thank you, Nate. Once the Patreon hits and we get our MLB, NHL teams, NBA teams, since we're going to buy the Jazz now. Once we buy those teams, we can start making those decisions again.
I'm going to be honest. I'm just going to be blunt about it. Please pay us. Please pay us.
Zach is so hungry.
Please donate money so that we can provide entertainment value for the people.
Yes. Yeah. See, now you're just getting too you're just getting too nice about it. Pay us.
It's been almost a month. Zach's hungry.
I might be leveling on hangry at this point.
I'm just surprised it took this long.
Right.
But my other key is like, you're 7'1". Your one shot shouldn't be a 3-pointer.
No, that was
like, you're the senior on the team. You're 7. I don't care who's pushing you around. I know he's not the biggest guy, but like, your one shot that you missed in the game is a 3-pointer. Like,
yeah,
come on, buddy.
It was insane. I saw him.
What are we doing here?
He has made those in the past, but when he spotted up to shoot that, I go, that's a choice. Considering like we know Creighton and we know Greg McDermott, like there are plenty of other capable 3-point shooters on that team, because that is how Greg McDermott rosters his team and coaches his team. Your 7'1" center should not be making those shots unless your name is Mr. Potato Jokic. He's the only one that is goofy enough to be that tall and shoot a 3 and drill it no matter which way he shoots it.
But I mean, like, yeah, he shot 22 shots against the Rio Grande Valley that we played earlier. Mm-hmm. Obviously different teams, but like,
it scored
49. He knows how to shoot the ball.
No, he didn't.
They weren't 22 3-pointers.
Yeah, it was certainly a choice.
Obviously, great for us. Thank you for doing that, but like,
yeah, it's certainly
this kind of begs my question that I say at this point in terms of or like just basketball in general. We're still early in the season. Is it one of those where it's like, would it have been that much different had we played them middle of December or like when we normally do? You know what I mean? Like as teams start kind of finding their groove, what they're good at, what
we said last week is normally when we do play them.
Right. So I'm sitting here like, did we just, not that I'm trying to downplay the win, because you never apologize for wins, but my question is, do we catch them at that more downward point where it's like we took advantage of the things they weren't doing well and won, which is great. But if we play them again later in the season, how much different is it going to be? But of course, if we also get better, we as Nebraska get better, then it might be a moot point. So,
well, I would feel confident in playing them again now that we know that Stephen Ashworth, their main senior point guard, is probably out for who knows how long after he rolled his ankle trying to kick out his leg for a 3-point that he was trying to draw a foul on and then didn't get the foul. It only ended up hurting his ankle.
Don't cheer for injuries, but don't be a moron.
Yeah.
To be fair, I didn't hear a single cheer in there. You're just clearly stating the fact of what
Correct.
He was doing.
Yup.
He was trying to stick out his leg when he shot a 3 to draw the foul and didn't draw the foul, didn't get the call, and subsequently just rolled his ankle landing it, trying on the leg that he kicked out. So
good work, pal.
That's Creighton is going to have to figure out their point guard situation because that's the guy that you brought back for his last year and was a veteran presence on your Elite 8 team last year. Or Sweet 16. I don't remember how far they got, but either way, hurts for them. But again, we don't root for injuries. It was just something that maybe you shouldn't do going forward, I think.
So obviously that's a lot of the Nebraska talk, but since we're on college basketball.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Obviously, there is obviously one other story that we will get to, but I wanted to ask before we get to that, were there any?
Is Nebraska back? Yes, obviously.
Well, we have to go through the other.
Who's the best 4-1 team in the nation? Nebraska.
Fred Hoiberg, the mayor of Lincoln.
No, like a legitimate question that I had was, are there any other great storylines that happened in college basketball over the weekend that I didn't watch any of it, so I didn't get to see anything.
I don't know about the weekend, but maybe Dan Hurley losing his mind on the refs today.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one I was going to get to. But
Duke did beat Arizona on Friday night as well. So that was
a big deal, though?
Well, I mean, it was a top 15 matchup, and Cooper Flagg actually showed up in this game. So
I'm asking that question from the perspective I don't really know these things.
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to get better about it, but I really my college basketball generally starts being interested. My interest in college basketball, starts around March. So.
And Tennessee manhandled Baylor. They were up 47-20 at half. They only ended up winning by 15, but for everything I saw, that was not a game.
No.
And Baylor, yeah, for reference, Tennessee's ranked 11, Baylor's ranked 13.
Interesting.
So being down 47-20 at half, not a great look.
No, not really.
And their other loss to a ranked team was at Gonzaga, and that was 101-63.
Holy cow.
And they play UConn on December 4th, so I'm sure that one will also go well for them.
Well, and
which UConn just lost.
Nate being, I was just going to say, Nate being the master of segues that he is, just now, we can go into UConn losing to Memphis in overtime. Hilarious.
In the Maui Invitational, nonetheless. But hey, it was Dan Hurley's comments afterwards that were really the best part of the story. Because what I was reading to you, Nate, while you were off the air, Zach, and he got a technical late in the game, which, may or may not have cost the game. Remains to be seen. But his exact quote was, I think it was the shitty calls, he said, adding, I would expect to come and play in an event, and I don't know too many back-to-back national championship teams that would get this type of whistle. Hurley told the reporter that he got a T and OT, not because of cursing at the official, but because he fell to the ground in disbelief over an over-the-back call. He's also aware of how his behavior came off. Hurley, quote, said, what I gave the cameras today was Oppenheimer.
Oh, geez, my guy.
And there's a lot more to the quote that I could go on about, but all of the comments are just like, maybe you shouldn't have given up 99 points instead.
Who's to say?
Take a page out of Fred's playbook and give up 64 and win.
We really will.
I don't know, man.
There's really no way to know.
There's no way to know.
Again, and I'm not gonna sit here and say that I'm the brightest bulb in the package or anything like that, but I think there are a few key things they could have done to win that game, namely scoring more than Memphis. But again, I'm not trying to spout that I'm smart. I'm not trying to say that I know more than people. I just think there's a legit strategy there where if they would have just scored more than Memphis, they would have won the game. Call me crazy. Call me crazy.
Could be.
But what do I know?
You don't. Well, with that, unless we have any more college basketball or Nebraska ball talks.
I mean, we are getting into. I would just
Feast week.
We are getting into the fun week of college basketball.
Feast
week.
I
mean, number 4 Auburn plays number 5 Iowa State here in
that'll be a good
hour.
Maui.
So. Yeah, Maui's great. I mean, you got Kansas Duke tomorrow, Houston Alabama tomorrow. Yeah, Slate's going to be great. Probably better than some dry turkey, so might as well supplement that in.
Dry. That's your. It sounds
I
like
was gonna say
issue.
who's cooking your turkey?
Yeah, sounds like a you issue. But
Nathan.
we'll wrapping this up. Nebraska ball plays South Dakota this Wednesday, and then they'll have North Florida next Sunday, probably before we talk again. So 2 home games before you get your first conference game on the road at Michigan State next week. So Big Ten, like, it's weird because they'll play those 2 games. They'll play 2 conference games, and then Nebraska's going to go back to playing the rest of their non-conference 2 games, and then they'll start conference play again. So I don't get college basketball scheduling. It's very weird, but nonetheless, Nebraska's got 2 games to get to 6-1 before you go on the road for your first conference game against Michigan State.
I will say that North Florida game, I've seen rumblings that could be a bit of a trap game.
Yes, they've looked pretty good so far.
This seems like their offense is pretty potent.
Legit.
So,
if Nebraska just draws up what they did against Creighton, I mean, they, in theory, could beat pretty much any team.
Yep. I mean, keep pounding them on defense. Anything can happen.
And that's.
I told you guys what a good strategy is. I think they could beat every game that they have if they do that. I'm just saying.
So come out pissed off for 40 minutes, acting like you're playing your biggest in-state rival every game.
Yes, correct.
I was just boiling it down to the simple fact of scoring more than the other team.
Okay.
But yeah,
I mean,
that works too.
That's one way to do it, though. That's one way to do it.
That sounds like a good coaching strategy, as opposed to, hey, just go score more than them. I mean, I still think that one sounds good, but I'm gonna.
But
hey guys, have you considered maybe getting good?
Yeah, good.
Skill issue.
Controller issue.
Yeah, there we go. We beat Creighton because they had a skill issue.
It was a skill issue. They took 42 threes and only hit 12 of them.
By the way, Mr. Greg McDermott, please don't come knock on the door at my house and smack me upside the head, because I really don't want that. He looks like a
former
big
Wayne
dude.
State College coach, Greg.
Yeah, Zach.
You.
That's been that's like a long time ago.
You got to start somewhere.
I'm not denying that.
That could
I'm just
be you.
saying.
Zach, we could talk to you in 20 years, and you're the Power 5 major head coach.
Better not be Creighton, though.
I doubt it.
Or you could take Wayne State to the moon.
Ooh. Now I just got to become a coach. There's a lot of steps to get to that point, I think.
Coaching's easy. Just put the people in and say, do the basketball.
Okay, well, yeah, I can do that. Score more than that team. Yeah, no, actually, you know what?
We'll go to stick puck here, which I do not have.
We're forgetting one about Nebraska. Let's not forget about the ladies.
Oh yes, the middle portion of the euphoric weekend.
We should also before we get even into this, let anybody else that would be interested in any other volleyball news know we know nothing beyond this. So I don't.
And we're also going to acknowledge before we get into the best vibes here that Nebraska women's basketball lost to Creighton, but they also lost Natalie Potts to a torn ACL in the last game.
Which is why they lost.
So, which is 100% why they would have won with Potts. Now, granted,
that was the very first game to the start of the weekend, and the vibes were pretty shaky after that result, because I would have put my money on the 2 women team winning and the 2 men team losing if I had to take my stab of what would have happened this weekend.
I mean, that's been a pretty solid bet in the past few years of Nebraska, to be honest. that simple bet, the way you just worded that, is a perfect way to word that. So,
but yes, volleyball continues their domination of not only owning Wisconsin the past couple of years, but sweeping Wisconsin at both series this year. At Madison they did, and then last Friday 3-0 in both sets or both matches. So Nebraska is very solely in their driver's seat to win the Big Ten. They play at Penn State, I believe, next. So yeah, the winner of that game will either be Nebraska will outright win the Big Ten or have a share of the Big Ten, albeit if Penn State does not lose again, which I don't. They might have one more game after that. So
because I think officially with us beating Wisconsin, they're now out of the running, right? So it's just basically between us.
Because Wisconsin had two conference losses before they played us. So now they have 3. And that, because like if we would have lost, then that would have kept Wisconsin alive.
Yep.
But now
they only said that on the broadcast like 14 times. Too.
Yeah, I know.
Which in 3 sets sounds like it wouldn't be that much. It was every 4 minutes. I was like, we get it.
So we finished.
Wisconsin really needs to get their stuff together if they want to stay in this.
Right.
I think we get
it. Yeah, we finish Friday at Penn State, and then the next day at Maryland to end the season, and then we'll figure out where Nebraska. Well, again, assuming that they win out, they'll likely have the number 1. Well, close to a number 1 overall seed, unless they give it to Pittsburgh, which they probably will. But Nebraska will at least host up until the Sweet 16. I think it is for volleyball, for how they do their bracket. So assuming Nebraska does not falter these next 2 games and somehow drop out of a top 4 seed, they should host up into the Sweet 16 in terms of matches for the tournament. So, but first things first, you want to win the Big Ten outright. You don't want to have a share of the Big Ten title. Wisconsin beat Penn State, so if you go by transitive property, we're already better than Penn State without playing.
We already beat Penn State, so we don't even need to play
the game. We don't even need to play the game. Let's just give it to us.
I think we can. Yeah, I was gonna say, I think we can just default to saying we won. So just give it to us now.
So big game Friday afternoon. It'll be right before we play Iowa too. So vibes are going to be incredibly high or mixed and low before we kick off against Iowa, because that game's at 4. The Iowa game's at 6:30. So
always
great. I forgot that the Iowa game was a night game.
So
it's nice.
Again, if I had to start off with one of them, I'd rather have volleyball first to kind of get me in. But it's going to be a tough game, all things considered. So. But yeah, we want the outright Big Ten championship. We don't want to share. We don't want none of that sharing. Good sportsmanship.
That's correct. Yep. I will say my main overall comment about the volleyball game, just kind of the general sense, is that, well, there were 2 that I said. I know I texted at least, but in our group chat was I loved how Wisconsin would go on a run and Nebraska would get up by 4 or 5 points, and then Nebraska would be like, okay. Or sorry, Wisconsin would be like, okay, we're going to come back. And then Nebraska would be like, all right, no, we're not going to allow you to do that. So there was Wisconsin would come back within a couple points. And it's maybe they're starting to go on a run. And then Nebraska would just put an end to it. But then a lot of that game was also Wisconsin shooting themselves in the foot. The amount of times they would be on a roll of 2 or 3 points in a row. And all of a sudden, there'd be a service error or it would go out of bounds or it would drop. It's just it was good for us, obviously, but I was just dang, what the heck? Right. It was great. They were it was 3 really, really good points, and then that's where the momentum would swing, and then Wisconsin would just be like, here is my 9 mil, and just right into the side of their foot. I'm like, okay, I guess.
You phrased that. That was awesome.
My only takeaways from what I saw was that, and I don't want to jinx things, but they look like they're locked in and on a mission this year.
That was the other thing I was going to say. After last year when they lost and they were like, we're going to come back stronger, and everybody was like, it's probably going to be a little bit of a rebuild year, and then we're just like, never mind.
I had the same thought too, Nate, because sweeping Wisconsin's always been hard for us, and we always play Wisconsin really close, but we swept them twice this year, and I'm like, is Wisconsin not as good as we think, or are we better than I thought we were? And I think it's the latter. I think we are clearly better than I mean, obviously, I think we are great. We obviously John Cook's the GOAT and everything, but I think like this team is just they are so much better than I give them credit for. And that's just them going out, and I'm like you said, Zach, last year. I mean, the last year was just such a heartbreaking way to end that season. Losing to 1 Texas and 2 losing in the national championship game.
Which no one thought they were going to get to. I'm not saying that we didn't think so,
Mhm.
but we were all like, we lost a lot. Like it's going to be a
Right.
lot. And then we get back to the national championship game, and then you
Right.
could tell at the in their press conference, they were
Mhm.
like, "No,
They
we've got unfinished business." I think is the quote they said, and I'm like, they mean it.
Mhm.
Right. And it's like you said, Zach, every time Wisconsin got on a roll, we'd come back and roll it right back and go on a 5 to 7 point run of our own. And
It was awesome.
that just tells you, just like you said, Nate, how locked in those girls are when they
Mhm.
get in the zone.
It's
you
crazy
can just
'cause-
tell, like watching them, they'll score a point, they'll like celebrate, and then immediately switch flips, and they're just right back into it.
Or even reverse, where like they might, like using Wisconsin as the example, they will go back, like they'll fall back to a few points, or like it'll get close, and then not only will they lock in, they'll like do the video game thing where all of a sudden they're leaning forward, like now it's time to take this seriously, and they doubly lock in.
Yeah.
It's fun to watch, and I can't believe I haven't watched more volleyball this year. Just I keep forgetting about it, and then it's like, oh yeah, they won. But like, it's just crazy to me how that I keep forgetting about it, and then all of a sudden I go to watch Wisconsin, and it's just like, oh, so this is how they've been all year, outside of SMU.
That's
who that was?
That's like the second or third game of the season. Yeah, it was like really early, and SMU's not terrible.
Not too shabby.
They beat Pitt, so that was the other thing I thought too. Is
not too shabby of a team.
Didn't we beat Pitt to get to the national championship last year? In one of the games, I don't know if we beat them to get there specifically.
Yeah,
I know we played.
Pretty sure the Final Four game.
That's what I thought. So I was thinking that could be a good, like if both those teams go to the championship, that could be a really good matchup. Just be like, aha. But Pitt also seems like they're unbeatable this year too, outside of the one game. So, all right, now we can go on to what you want to talk about before.
Well, I mean, I don't have too much to add for stick puck or
I do
professional basketball, because
I was gonna say basketball has been like kind of quiet for all of us, hasn't it?
I mean, likely not for Nate, but at least since we last talked, the Thunder have not played a game yet. So, like, I literally have nothing to add for the Thunder aspect. Nor the Avs have won through. The Avs have won 3 in a row, but they're getting their butts kicked right now to Tampa. So that's 3-game winning streaks probably going to come to an end. But
I will say with NHL, the Predators continue to rise slowly, because the other night on Saturday night, somehow continuing my immaculate sports weekend, they ended up beating the Winnipeg Jets. And I was so hyped from the Husker game, like I forgot that it was even on, so I could have watched it because it started at like 8. I could have watched it, and then I get like the notification on my phone, and it said Nashville like 4, Winnipeg 1 or whatever. I was like, oh, that's cool. Wait, what? I literally was like, excuse me. So that was exciting news. But Nashville continues to Nashville, so they're slowly getting up there, but they're still pretty far at the bottom of the rankings. So hopefully, Nate, you should have more to talk about with NHL, though. I mean, your team is number 2.
Something Darius Rucker rocked me like a wagon wheel.
Oh,
took me a little. I was like, what?
I was also like, where is he going with this one?
Yeah, I usually figure it out about halfway through.
Is it like Michael Scott meme?
It worked.
It's like Michael Scott's like, sometimes I just start a sentence and then I don't know where it's going to go until I finish it.
It's a choose your own adventure for everyone. But yeah, we beat Edmonton, lost to Calgary, currently tied with Winnipeg at the moment. So vibes are all right. We're I mean, second place and right behind Winnipeg by a couple points, but I mean, if they can figure out how to pull out a win here, they'll be a point behind them. So
I'm looking at like your the Minnesota Wild's like home and away, right? Or their like win-loss records. It's crazy to me that they play worse at home than they do away. Somehow they're a better away team, like immensely. They're 4-2-1 at home and 9-1
13 away and 7 at home.
Oh, well, still, but I mean, it's just crazy. You would think that maybe the home games are acting as the away games. So,
the Timberwolves last year were awful at home for some reason. So I don't know.
I mean,
maybe
hey,
something in the water.
If it's a strategy that works, I suppose we take it. Speaking of the Timberwolves, let's go to the NBA.
Oh no. I'm not ready.
Well, I'll let you get yourself ready because, like Andy said, the NBA's been somewhat quiet.
I have literally nothing to add since.
I was gonna say I don't think the Suns haven't played since they play tomorrow. So
I just meant that I'm not emotionally ready.
Oh well, that's also fair. The only exciting news that did come out officially today for the Suns before their game against the Lakers tomorrow is that Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant are finally back, which is good because they need them. At least
because my fantasy team needs Kevin Durant.
So there you go, Nate. He is officially. I don't know if they've like officially designated him as good to go. I think he's probable, but I think it's more or less like everybody's like he's gonna play. I think he even announced he's like, yeah, I'm playing tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So that's exciting.
Yeah, I checked my phone this afternoon and like half of the people that have been injured for the past month are coming back like this week apparently. So that's good to see, I guess.
Comeback season is still on, Nate.
I guess the Timberwolves continue to be an incredibly unserious team. They were playing the Raptors last Thursday in Toronto. I believe at the time Toronto had 2 wins. I think they're up to 4 now, so I guess they might be on a little, or they might have been at 3 wins there. But either way, not a great team. I mean, they have Scotty Barnes and RJ Barrett and some other guys.
Some other guys, he says.
The Timberwolves. I didn't really get to watch all of it. I just kind of watched some highlights, and from the folks that I listened to, they said that it was like 95-95, and the Raptors got fouled on something stupid, went up 97-95 with like 6 minutes left in the fourth, and the game was pretty much over by then. So they only lost by 5 at the end, but there was some infighting with the team. Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert were apparently getting incredibly passive-aggressive towards each other, and Julius Randle wasn't passing the ball to Rudy when he was wide open for a dunk, and then Rudy hip-checked Scotty Barnes for a big foul later on, and then it just kind of cascaded, and Mike Conley wasn't playing, so there was no real adult in the room at the time to bring the tempers down, and it just not good vibes. And then there there weren't like any media members in Toronto for Minnesota because, I mean, you kind of have to do your own things. They don't have their explicit ones, and apparently Taylor Swift was in Toronto that night or that weekend, so hotels were insanely expensive, so a lot of the media members just didn't go. So there was no one to be like in the locker room afterwards to talk to the players and actually figure out what happened. So that was just kind of a mystery until they played Boston on Sunday. And they lost by 2, which is seemingly good. But
to the Celtics, yeah.
From what I heard, it was kind of similar dynamics to like the Phoenix game or Sacramento game where they were just kind of unserious about it. It wasn't really a game, but they have like the team is good. They have good players, and they're good enough to be like, oh wow, we need to step up, I guess, and in the fourth quarter and make this a game. And they did enough to make it a game in the fourth quarter. But from everything I heard, I didn't get to watch that one either, but everything I heard was like, yeah, it wasn't really that like competitive. It wasn't like a back and forth kind of contest. And so vibes are kind of weird in Minnesota at the moment. There was.
I mean, I get it. They should probably upgrade their buses from those wooden wagons that they got to get to games. But
I guess.
Yeah.
I feel like that would make me angry as a player. But
One of
Culture issue,
the
Nate?
one of the good storylines has come out of it though. Like Mike Conley, I think, has had some sort of foot injury the past few games, and so we've been giving some more minutes to our rookie 8th round pick Rob Dillingham, who I believe is like 6'3", 175 pounds is generous. He's probably close to like 150, honestly. But he's a
pounds soaking wet.
He's a little dude, but he's been getting a lot of run and he's been playing really well, and he's got some hooping to him. He had 14 points in 16 minutes against Boston, who's like no slouch on defense, and he's learning it. He's a little guy, so his defense is going to be a little shaky. They're going to attack him, but he's starting to fit in, and that's good to see from the Timberwolves perspective, because he's 19 years old and small, and so it's on paper is like we'll develop him and maybe by the end of the season he'll get some minutes and then we'll see where he's at next year kind of thing. But seeing him able to contribute in within the first 15 games of the season is good to see. So
it worked out for the Suns with Ryan Dunn. I mean, this guy they drafted, and it's worked out well for him, so it's not unheard of.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. With that, we'll wrap it up here with a little professional foosball. And to steal Zach's exact quote from last night, Saquon might be Jesus.
Yeah, that's accurate. This is kind of going backwards then, because that game was Sunday night's game. But regardless, kind of one of those games of a tales of two halves, maybe, where it looked like the Eagles were kind of playing with their food a little bit almost.
I love at one point when we were talking, you're like, oh, this is like a 4th and something. Nick's not going to go for it. And I'm like, oh, Zach, you should know your head coach better than that. Of course he's going to go for
it. So correct. However, what I didn't know when I said that was that there were like 2 seconds left.
Right before half.
Quarter. And so I was like, oh, I thought there was still like 6 minutes. It was like 4th and 7. And I was like, please tell me we're not going for this. But
Sirianni loves it.
I don't think they ended up doing it. I think they either ended up calling a timeout or something anyway. So it didn't matter. It was just like, whatever. So no. And then, so they went in and they went at halftime. And why is my brain not working? Holy cow. The Rams. I was like, who did they play? Like, I could see the players. I'm like, I could see it. And I just, for whatever reason, it was not there. And the first half, the Rams looked like the Rams. Not that they're bad, but definitely looked like they had 2 really good receivers, and their offense was keeping them in it, and their defense was doing well. And then come out in the second half, and Eagles ran away with it, literally, with Saquon starting like a 72-yard run or something like that. And it was just like, there it is. And then I saw today on a bunch of social medias that he got so caught up in, I don't think it was that run, but it was one of his other ones.
The other 75-yard run?
Yeah. Where he made the touchdown and then ran to the sidelines and like flipped the ball to a fan, and then later found out that ball was like a record-breaking ball. So people were like, you should have kept it. And he's like, oh no.
Yeah, I think when you run for 255 yards in a game, is going to be up there, one of the records. If it's not a career best, it's certainly one of the all-time bests.
It's crazy too, because I read a stat today that he, I think, is 80 yards off of his highest production ever as a running back in the NFL, or even in like his total career. I guess I don't remember if it included college. And then they followed that up with, there are still 6 games left. It's just like, it's crazy how good he's been, because I know my concern was he's injury prone. Turns out running backs are injury prone when your offensive line doesn't, keeps getting you tackled.
Rivals Nebraska's.
Yeah, let me offer you this, Zach. When your offensive line is not the New York Giants.
Correct. And now speaking of the New York Giants, though, I mean, the Eagles won pretty handedly. It wasn't a boring game by any means, but that second half, they ran away with it.
I certainly loved all of Saquon. He definitely heard my rant last week and said, "This one's for you, home dog."
I
The
love
good news is no one can complain about Saquon not getting touchdowns and points now.
Yeah,
I kind of used it up now. Worth it.
No, but the New York Giants just continue to be kind of funny. Where literally the day after we record last week, Daniel Jones.
Did you see? Oh yeah,
announced,
that's
sorry,
the segment. Yeah,
the Giants announced that they are officially they have, as of this point, they have officially released him. He cleared waivers, so he's a free agent. It's just like, I get it. I think at this point the Giants have to essentially not burn it down, but start over, build a new foundation essentially and figure it out from square one.
There's no foundation to start
well,
with.
that's what I mean, is whoever they bring in is going to have a lot of work ahead of them. So it's going to be really interesting to see what the Giants do, but yeah. And then just wait until Daniel Jones goes to the Vikings.
Hey.
And then
JJ McCarthy backup, baby.
Either Malik Neighbors said it today or yesterday after the game. That he was like, and I think Dayball agreed with him too, that he was like, the Giants, like, this team is soft AF for not getting him the ball. And Dayball's like, yeah, he probably should be getting like 10 plus targets a game. And I'm like, well, again, the quarterback prior to Tommy DeVito, I don't know. He was not bad, but he wasn't great. But he's not also like the guy that I want to pin my first round draft pick in hopes of getting the ball to. And then obviously Tommy DeVito's not going to be that guy to do it either for Neighbors. So it'd
be real funny if it was, though.
Right.
Well, no, here's what's going to happen. He's going to have like 1 or 2 games where he just goes off and does exactly that and plays very well. And then after that, he's going to fall off the rest of the cliff because his ceiling has been met. It's kind of the whole, they brought in a new quarterback. We don't have a whole lot of tape on him, which with him they do, but it's not
they played last year.
Right, but it's not like they're going to have the same amount as they do on like Daniel Jones or somebody.
Man, funniest outcome is they like run the table, make a playoff run, extend Tommy DeVito like they did Daniel Jones, and put themselves in hell for another 4 years.
I don't think anybody would be upset about that.
All I'm figuring out on the NFL this year so far is that there are 2 places if you're going to play in the NFL that you probably don't want to go. And it's the state of New York.
It's the literal state of New York.
Which actually isn't even true because I guess the Jets, play in New York. But that might
They play in New Jersey, technically.
Don't the Giants too?
Yes, they technically play
so
in
they
Jersey.
Don't like their whole both of those franchises are liars.
Like
good to know.
I think it's MetLife Stadium. Yeah, it's technically in New Jersey. Yeah, it's technically
I thought
in
so.
New Jersey.
Meadowlands.
So,
but yeah, that we started with the Sunday night game because that's the comment I wanted to get out there. We're going to get to obviously the best game, which was the Thursday night game with Jameis. First off, it was just Jameis Winston in prime time. That's storyline number 1. Storyline number 2 was the first snow game of the year, and boy, was it a snow game if we
hopefully not the last.
Hopefully not the last. Buffalo is always due for one every year.
That's true.
The only snow game I've seen that was worse than that one, at least in the one I'm going to reference isn't even recent memory, but it's the one the Eagles played in where you couldn't see anything.
I will stop you there. There is no such thing as a bad snow game.
You're right.
No, I'm just saying. Like I think that like the TV graphics hadn't quite even got to the point. So like you had a yellow line and then maybe the blue line and then like they imposed the numbers on the field.
Mm-hmm.
They had to do it. I don't even think they had that at that time. So it was so hard to watch.
Yep.
Everybody was like, "No, don't like AI generate the numbers. Just give us to what it actually looks like on the field for everybody else."
It was such a jarring transition too, because then they would go from that and then like to a replay, and then all the numbers were just gone, and you're like, okay, yeah, don't do that.
Right. So obviously the Browns pull off the upset against Pittsburgh in the best snow game that I've seen in quite some time. Obviously right now we have the Monday night game going on between Baltimore and the Chargers and
the Hardball,
if you want to call it, and Baltimore obviously desperately needs to win this game just to keep themselves in the playoff. But now that Pittsburgh lost and they still have to play Pittsburgh again, a chance to, regain some ground on claiming the top of the AFC North and, trying to get that tiebreaker against Pittsburgh when they meet. I think they play next week again. Or no, I think it's the Browns. Either way, they still have to play one more time before the end of the season. So Baltimore's down 7-0 right now to the Chargers. So not looking great.
And the Chargers are driving.
They are. Yeah, I don't like the fact that the Chargers are doing good now.
Chargers might be a wagon once they get some receivers next year.
Yeah, that's what kind of scares me. But
I still maintain what I said last week, where somehow I was just not aware at the time that they were. This was last week. They were 6-3, but now they're 7-3. It's just like, when did this happen? Like, when did that happen? Like, how did I miss that? Right. And I don't cheer for the Chargers, so that's a lot of it. But I was just like, I feel like that should be a bigger storyline because they were not good last year. But what do I know?
Brandon Staley.
I understand. Yeah. I get that.
Again, I made this sentiment last year. I was absolutely devastated that they fired Brandon Staley because I knew something like this was going to happen.
2 free W's a win.
Yes, 2 free W's every single year because Brandon Staley would outcoach himself and losing every single game in horrific fashion. And yeah, now that they have Jim Harbaugh, that does scare me because he's actually a good head coach. Goofy guy, weird guy, football
very
guy.
Weird, very
weird guy.
I keep waiting for him and Sean Payton to get in a press conference war. I know it's going to happen.
They will.
It just hasn't yet.
It's going to happen.
I'm in my seat waiting for it.
It's still Harbaugh's still filling out his team, but once we get this going every 2 times every year, it's going to get there at some point. But yeah, we obviously need to talk about the Cowboys being a wagon again. Nothing more to say.
Those are words.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but all right.
What do you mean, Zach? Are you saying the Commanders are frauds?
I'm just gonna say,
says the leader of the NFC Beast.
I'm just gonna say the NFL, or people that watched the NFL this last week that watched any form of that game, knows exactly
that was
the answer to that question.
That fourth quarter,
terrible game until the last 2 minutes,
where it got insanely entertaining.
My favorite of that whole game had to be the offense, or the good Lord, onside kick returned for a touchdown.
Yep.
And even made better because it's the dude's awareness should have been telling him, hey, go down at the 5 and then just run the clock out. No, he wanted to score, and you could tell.
I like to imagine that Scott Hansen, when the witching hour happens, is somewhere in the studios which button can we push the insanity button for the game? And then he's just able to do that. And then all hell breaks loose during the witching hour.
The Buffalo Wild Wings button, right?
Yes. I like to imagine that he
not, but could be.
Yes. Because I mean, the witching hour of that noon slate was incredible. And Nate's game was all sadly involved in said witching hour madness. But then you had the Titans upsetting the Texans. You had the Panthers driving to almost beat the Chiefs during that time. I mean, those were 4
time for Mahomes.
Yeah, a minute 40 actually, which is insanely too much time for Mahomes.
And then maybe don't leave a 60-yard run right at the game. Man.
I was gonna say the Carolina defense was playing, at least for the most part, up until that play, well enough.
Mm-hmm.
The Chiefs were doing the things they normally do, right?
Right.
It's shocker, they're gonna keep doing that, but they were holding them back enough to where it's I could see where they can hold them, and then they let him go for down to the 20, and I'm well, never mind.
Right. So that's how I like to imagine it. But yeah, the witching hour of those 4 games in general was insane, and the 2 that were probably obviously the biggest contributors were the Commies and Cowboys in Nate's game. Which, again, Nate's team had no right to make that a witching hour game, but they did.
No. We said we're up 24-10. How about going to overtime?
I will say though that the end of that fourth quarter was absolute chaos, and I loved every second of it. I hated it because I was like, "Nah, man, come on,
I
like, the
did
Vikings gotta
not.
pull this out." Correct? No, I get it.
know.
I would have hated it if it was the Eagles, but man, it was fun to watch.
And I know
they won it on a field goal though.
They did,
and that means something.
We don't apologize for wins.
Nope.
We don't. But I know I told you guys this yesterday, and I genuinely didn't mean it as a jinx when I first said it. Nate said like nervy, and I'm like, you'll be fine unless they recover the onside kick, and then they did. And
10 seconds later, the Bears recover the onside kick.
And then I was like, okay, now you have the right to be nervous.
Only then did you have the
again.
right to be nervous.
I went with the math of the improbable statistic to actually recover onsides in this day and age, which is like incredibly low now.
Yeah,
and there were two yesterday.
Factor in
there were two yesterday.
That football game.
So, again, we've said it. The NFL is literally a week-to-week sport, and anything can happen. But
any given Sunday, baby.
I wouldn't have guessed the Cowboys to beat the Commanders with Cooper Rush. Like, what are you doing? Doesn't the organic tank without actually saying you're tanking apply to the Cowboys? Do they just not want to?
Shh, don't question them. Just let it happen. Just let it happen.
Let Jerry's genius shine through.
Let them keep
I will
winning
say,
and
though,
screw themselves out of a draft pick.
I think
people say that might not be the worst idea.
I do think, though,
it almost screwed Denver, but it didn't.
I do think that the witching hour just went to become a witching weekend, because the fact that Cleveland upset Pittsburgh to start with, like, that was the start of the football weekend, and that's what we got. I'm like, no, that should not happen. And so that basically set the precedent for the rest of the weekend. Obviously, not all the games went that way, but
that's the afternoon slate was kind of gross.
I would agree, because I got real nervy during my game, and I should have known from the start that on the road in Las Vegas, a divisional game, which are always hard to win regardless, like Nate now knows, despite if you're playing the worst team in your division, it's still very hard to win divisional games.
I mean, the Bears are only bad because they keep losing to the rest of the NFC
North. But, I mean, the Raiders are statistically bad on paper, and I should have known, like, this shouldn't be a trap game, but it's probably going to be a trap game. And Denver was losing 13-9 at half, and I go, this sounds about right, that they come off a slaughtering of Atlanta, and then you get to the somewhat easier portion of your schedule, and then you just decide, nah, we're
Mac
good.
Jones score a rushing touchdown.
Yeah.
I will say, though, there were a lot of parallels with, like, the Denver game and then the Eagles game, because, like, the first half, it's like the teams that should be winning they were not very convincingly, either we're not winning or not convincingly winning. And it's like, oh, this is going to come down to the wire. And then the second half comes, and they're like, oh, right, never mind.
And then
we remember how to do this.
Denver's defense decided to, do that thing where it does all year and lead the NFL in sacks, which they currently do right now. They decided, like, we can actually sack Gardner Minshew and make him make mistakes. And they did.
And you killed him.
And then we killed him. So I only wanted the interception and the sacks portion, which he did both. I didn't want to kill him, but we did.
Here we are.
And here we are. And now they're going to ride the rest of the season with Desmond Ridder. So,
or Aiden O'Connell.
Who's going to come back.
An option.
Yes. So, Denver came back in the second half, figured out that, like, oh, we're actually better on offense and defense, and did decide to, win the game this time. Keep their playoff. Yes, tale of two halves. Keep their playoff hopes alive right now. Obviously, they need to keep winning to keep that hope alive. Now, they've got like a game and a half cushion on Miami, who now suddenly looks good again with Tua.
Turns out having a quarterback playing quarterback.
Hold on. They played the Patriots. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here with them. They look more competent than they did. That doesn't necessarily mean they look good.
No.
Let's make sure that we're on the same side of understanding here.
So, it helps. Right now, Denver's got a 73% chance to make the playoff. But yeah, like I said,
Which someone, but when we started this season, didn't think was going to happen. Mr. Doubter over here.
Do you blame me?
I do now. Hindsight being 2020 and all that.
With an unknown rookie quarterback, and now given what I've seen of the offense, that Sean Payton loves to play rookies, so like half our offense of weapons are rookies that we're playing.
I'm just saying.
And based on how the defense played last year at the start of the season, I'm like, it could do the same thing again and give up 70 points again.
Here's the problem, is that you're inserting logic into this argument. I am foregoing all logic and just telling you that you were crazy to even think that. And don't go back and look if I agreed with you.
Right.
Because I'll call you a liar. And no, I didn't. So,
but it helps. The Colts lost. Bengals are on a bye week. Like I said, they got a game and a half on the Dolphins, got two and a half games on the Colts. Convincingly and surprisingly enough, the 9, 10, and 11 seeds of the Colts, Bengals, and Browns, Denver still has to play all three of those teams. So Denver can really just control its own destiny if it just beats the bubble teams, because you still have the Chargers and the Chiefs left. And, one way or another, those might be both losses if you just chalk it up to those. But certainly have a chance to make your case of beating the bubble teams below you, and certainly just kind of giving yourself a further edge and making the playoffs, which, like I said, there might be a lot of firsts that happened for me this year in football season, with Nebraska making a bowl and Denver making the playoffs for the first time since 2015. So there's a lot riding on my teams this year. One of them already did it. The other one is closer than I thought they would be at this point in the season and doing their portion of it. So, but they got Jameis on Monday night next week, so that's certainly not going to go poorly for me at all. I fear primetime Jameis is
5 touchdowns or 5 interceptions.
Yeah.
There's no in between there.
I want the latter if that's so bad, but I fear that the first portion might happen with Jameis in primetime. And the Browns. And the Browns have looked better with Jameis in charge. So
again, that bar was at the mantle of the earth.
It was pretty low, but yeah, like I said, I'm more pleasantly surprised and happy with how the things are going with Denver right now. But I don't want to keep tooting my own horn, but Bo Nix for Offensive Rookie of the Year, especially how Jaden played on Sunday when you can't beat Cooper Rush. Not that that's a given criteria, but
I
it
don't
doesn't
know
help.
that was Jaden Daniels' fault that they didn't win that game.
It wasn't. Jaden played pretty good. I'm throwing that criteria in there for my doing.
You might also be biased, just saying.
Give or take.
Just a little bit.
Give or take. All right. We go pick time, boys.
Do we want to go picks or do we want to go Nebraska score first?
Oh, you should do Nebraska score first. Probably should have done that portion during the Nebraska portion, but yeah.
Didn't even think about it. But
Didn't think about it.
My neck hurts from the whiplash.
We'll go Nebraska pick first. So, like we said, Black Friday game, annual tradition, 6:30 on NBC, night game at Kinetic. So, still a lot riding on the game. Nebraska, just to further get the 7th win, would be, I think it would be the first time. No, it wouldn't. I'd have to look at that stat. I don't know what Rule's year 2 records have been. If he's had 7 wins in year 2, or if it's only been like the 6 wins in year 2. But what he's done at Temple at Baylor.
Has he had 6 wins in year 2?
That's what I don't know. Either way, still a chance to get their 7th win, get a better proposition to get like a closer to New Year's Eve type bowl game. But I think Saturday gave us a lot of confidence of how their offense can operate going forward. Now, obviously, Iowa always has a stout defense and very much are one-dimensional on offense. So still with that, we did it 2 years ago in Iowa City with Casey Thompson and Trey Palmer, and Nate's version of 150-yard bombs to Trey Palmer need to come to fruition again. We just do the same
I'm just
blueprint.
hoping somebody wakes up pissed off.
Yeah. Just whether it be Ja'Cory Barney, Jamal Banks, Isaiah Neyer, Emmett Johnson, even. I'd take another 115 plus yard performance again from him. Certainly wouldn't hurt the soul. But I think Iowa's favored right now.
5.5.
5.5, yeah.
Yep.
And I imagine that won't get too much closer to. I mean, if it goes up by Friday, it might get close to 7 points. So I don't think it's going to get over a touchdown point spread by the time Friday comes around. For Iowa, unless a lot of money
down a little bit too.
Yeah, I say unless a lot of money comes in on that as it gets higher, that people are going to take Nebraska to cover. But I think the offense shows up again. I think we finally saw the version of Dylan that we wanted to see consistently all year. I think he's much happier with how Dana's calling plays, how the offense is running, how smoothly we are. I also saw a stat that was the first game Nebraska has not given up a tackle for a loss all season. Which
nice little stat.
Incredible that one, if this was the same line we've been playing with all year, where were they all year? And two, is that just the Dana Holgerson effect that all it takes is him coming in yelling at guys to block and then they suddenly do it? Like, I don't know.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what week 3 brings.
Yeah, we'll see what week 3 brings.
So.
We always play. I'm almost positive every game, but like one of these has always been a one-score game against Iowa. Gonna pick the same thing again.
That's the Nebraska way, my guy.
Yeah, but I'm gonna go 34-27 Nebraska. It's gonna be, Iowa's just they're too good on offensive running the ball with Caleb Johnson to not eventually break probably like a 60-70 yard run. Wisconsin got close a couple of times, and we were lucky enough to run them down in space and everything. One from poor tackling, which happened to the first place Isaac Gifford. But I think now that we have a competent field goal kicker, we can finally start picking field goal score games again. And Nebraska does pull it out at the end. I think that'll be either a second to last drive or a game-winning last drive to pull out the quote-unquote upset against Iowa in Kinetic Stadium, and Nebraska gets that 7th win. Go hide right into Duke Mayo Bowl.
The bowl game.
Okay. But yeah,
Nate, you or me?
Picks. I think I'm gonna go a little closer, a little lower scoring too. I'm a little worried that kickoff's going to be like 20 degrees and into the teens by like after halftime.
It will be.
That's going to be interesting to see how our guys adjust to that. I'm going to go with the 21-17 Husker victory though.
Okay.
Love it. Then I'm going to kind of split the difference. I think I'm going to say 30-27. Good guys. Okay. It's gonna be like you said, Andy. You both have alluded to it with your picks. It's gonna come down to the wire. It's Iowa and Nebraska. We always
play it like this every year.
All right, let's go. Let's go Nebraska. All right, on to our actual picks. On to our picks.
Bold picks.
Yeah, that is our actual pick, but that's Nebraska specific. We do more here. We're for the people.
We are for the people. Bold pick. I will say with confidence that Detroit is going to murder Chicago on Thanksgiving.
What's the line?
That's a fantastic question. Have not looked that up yet. All I saw was the score.
Fair enough.
All I saw was the matchup. Let me get back
11
to you on that one. Yeah.
According to ESPN, so
hammer Detroit on that one.
Yeah, I like that.
It's Chicago does have a better defense that probably the Lions have seen in the past recent weeks, but the Lions are still just too good on offense to not turn it up when they want to. And Jahmyr Gibbs is really fast. If you don't know, he's like Sonic's fast.
I don't know if he's quite that fast. Sonic is
he's pretty
pretty fast. No, Sonic is also notably very fast though. So let's
So that'll be my bold pick.
Sports bold goes to Detroit.
Right. I think for my bold pick, I think I'm gonna hitch my wagon to the boat rowers again. I'm gonna pick Minnesota to beat Wisconsin. Wisconsin's 2-point favorite, I think.
Oh yeah, they're a favorite.
You're calling it
what?
Wisconsin's favorite.
It's in Madison.
Yep. Oh, okay.
But you're picking an outright W?
Yep.
All right. W.
Damn, that's a.
I'm putting that in the column there. Like it's not the line, it's the W. So
Yep.
I
Okay.
put money
PJ
on-
Fleck's gonna put Luke Fickle out of his misery.
I love it. And then for me, I'm gonna stick with. I say stick with my gut, but I don't know if I love it. Ooh, this is on my birthday too. Maybe this is what I'll be doing. Memphis and Tulane play in college football, and so Tulane is favored by 14.5 points, which is a lot. And I think Memphis is a good team, but I think Tulane's they've been playing well. They've been scoring points. I think I'm going to say 14.5 is. I'm slamming that. So,
okay. And now sick picks. I will go Auburn to upset Alabama. Auburn's an 11.5 point dog. I watched Auburn last week, and I'm like, you know what? After the slacking that Alabama just took, and Auburn coming off that incredible win, Auburn's going to go into Birmingham and win the Iron Bowl and officially kick Alabama out of the playoff race.
I love that.
And then Alabama's probably going to win by 30. But you know what? That's why we make them.
Nathan, unless you're waiting, or unless you're thinking, unless you're still thinking. I got mine locked.
I just saw another one that might.
All right, I'll give you time to think and actually, get real granular with it. I hate this pick with every fiber of my being, but I can absolutely see this. Oh yeah, that's what I mean. Like I don't like this, but I could see it being the case. I'm gonna pick New York to cover Dallas. Dallas is a 4-point favorite, but I legitimately think like Tommy DeVito is going to do something stupid and
what time's that game?
Keep it within 3.
It's at Jury World, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh,
3:30. That's what I mean, though. There's a lot of stuff coming down the pipe here where it's like, I don't know, New York could pull something off.
That sun is going to be setting. Oh, baby.
So I'm picking New York over just to cover, not to win necessarily, but I think it's going to be like a 2-point game.
Hell yeah, I love it.
All right,
Nathan, you're a sick pick.
I think for my sick pick, I'm gonna go Indiana covers -29.5 on Purdue.
Okay.
You know what? I made the one call the one time where I thought the team was like Purdue was going to keep up, and then they didn't. So I like that pick actually.
Okay.
Yep. I
I like that a lot.
Indiana outpaces them by more than 30.
Well, and especially coming off of their first loss of the season, they're going to be angry.
I mean,
I think Cignetti's going to have a field day with that one.
Not that, a win over Purdue is going to do anything, but, I could definitely see that, Nate, of like trying to shell out a 50, 60 point offensive performance to like, hey, we can still do this in the playoff type thing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right. With that, so hopefully everybody had a good Thanksgiving, because by the time this comes out, it'll be after the holiday. So if you're listening to this while you're out Black Friday shopping or Friday online shopping at home, gearing up for volleyball and the Friday night football game for Nebraska, we are your source for sports. That is Nate. That is Zach. I am Andy. We are your #1 sports ball podcast.